Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Indy Pro 2000 series here at Virginia International Raceway. Southern Virginia, we go road racing once again. We have 17 corners, a little over 3 miles, and an intense racing action here today. Here's the track facts and the weather that we have today. We're in Alton, Virginia, just a little bit north of the North Carolina and Virginia border. Like I said, 3.2 miles. And it's going to be a tight and intense circuit. Passing going to come at a premium here. You can see all the twists and bends as we go around the track, 17 corners. And it's a nice Virginia day here. 78 degrees track temp, 76 ambient temp, and a light breeze, low humidity. Perfect weather to go racing. My name is Jonathan Burke. I am joined alongside my colleague Tom Davis. And Hugo Lee's doing the camera work, as well as the TV cameras provided by Istvan Ballo and Track Cams 22. Take a look at the championship standings. Jack Ashton from the Fordzilla team in first place. Frank Newen has been nickel and diming points wherever he can in second. Olson Walsh in third with 673. And Joris Ingles, we haven't really seen much of him in many of the broadcasted races, but he's getting a lot of points, 646. Greg Seitz, we know how strong he is in fifth. Everett Paddock in sixth. Don Rathberg in seventh. Thomas Zeiger, Andrew Barry, two guys we saw towards the front of the field last week, have also been getting as many points as possible, 560 for each of them. And then Andrew Dixon rounding out your top 10 in the championship. And as we get a look at cars on track right now, the number one of Greg Seitz taking to the circuit. I can bring in Tom Davis. And Tom, you mentioned this is one of the tracks that you first raced here in video games. And what do you really like about this circuit, especially with these Pro Mazda machines being here?
Well, yeah, it goes all the way back to when we were just kind of pressing buttons on a controller before the concept of a wheel had even could just come into little Tom Davis's mind. I remember going off the track a lot, particularly through turns 7, 8, and 9. This section just here, really quick. But then a lot of places where you can make inventive overtakes as well. You know, obviously you can get them on the brakes into turn 1, but you've got the opportunity to try to get the exit into that awkward little NASCAR bend left hook section. Up at the oak tree as well, and then when you come back down through the roller coaster, there's lots of opportunities to invent something, and ultimately that makes it a very enjoyable circuit.
Yeah, but one of the things that we should probably note about here, it's a tight circuit, so it's going to be a thin margin of error for a lot of these drivers. And if you make it a wrong overtake, we saw this at Suzuka just a few weeks ago, it could take out you and another competitor in this race and really ruin your chances at a good finish.
It can do, but I would say the difference between here and Suzuka is Suzuka's narrow with entire sections where it's just impossible to make the overtake. So it gets you into that mindset where I'm going to have to do something, I'm getting more and more frustrated, I'm held up, and then eventually you try it in almost a Monaco-style way where it's just never going to happen, but you've put yourself in a mental corner. Virginia, on the other hand, there are opportunities and there will be mistakes as well, and you put that together and you'll have far more close racing, side-by-side action, despite the fact that it's a narrow circuit.
Looking now at the number 11 machine, Martin Brujos from the Benelux area, either Brussels or France. Yet to be determined which one that is. I wish sometimes I would specify. If he goes off and hard into the barrier, and again, that's the thin margin of error I was talking about. You just run a little wide here into this grass, and it's a death sentence. And there's a lot of weird barriers and hard areas to make contact with. It can really ruin your day, and these repairs will take some time in the race setting.
Yeah, let's hope he's not got a direct drive wheel either, because I'm sure that'll have hurt his wrists if he wasn't too careful. But here's Jean-Michel Nuon. He's coming through very tricky all the way throughout the lap, really, because it's rarely straight. You're riding all these curves, bouncing. You've got to try and control a little bit of understeer, which then turns to oversteer. Up the hill once again. Here's the section I was talking about, 7, 8, and 9. It looks simple, but when you're going side by side through there, you've got to be absolutely inch perfect.
And then you kind of see, like, on the rev limiter right there, like, he ain't trying to slow down. They're trying to go full out through here as we head through the oak tree section. Yeah, get that section wrong, and you're going to be flying over the border into North Carolina. But you're right, there's a lot of twists and turns, but for these cars, you have to remain flat out in order to maintain a lot of speed. And we're heading down the long back straightaway as it looks like Nuon is abandoning this lap, and there's Greg Seitz right now. We're not taking the Madison Avenue little kink. It's all the way down to the roller coaster section. I should point that out, but that's the only straight point on this track is the back straightaway. Everywhere else, it's a kink, it's a turn, and you gotta really maintain that speed and hold it if you have a chance of getting to the front of the field.
And concentration as well. I think that's one thing that's often underestimated when we're talking about circuits other than the Nordschleife. It takes a lot of brain power just to remember to turn this a little bit when you're in your flat-out section, to go a little bit left as opposed to just keeping it in a straight line when you're side by side with somebody. And all of that builds up over the course of the race towards the end of it, where eventually something is going to give.
Greg Sainz going to try and improve his lap time. I don't think he'll be able to make it back before qualifying is over. Maybe just getting some last practice laps in, as we have a smaller field today, at least. Only about 13 cars in this section. This racing does split at around 24, 26 drivers, and we had 28 registers. We have 2 different splits. There's a bottom split that is qualifying right now. As qualifying comes to an end, as Greg Sainz will be removed off the track in about there he goes. And we should get your starting order in just a moment's time. So here we go. Emil Burstoff from Iberia in the number 2 machine takes P1. Christopher Wright from Florida in P2. First time we've seen him really towards the front. Jack Ashton in number 3 is in P3. Greg Sainz starting in 4th place. Frank Nguyen from Canada in P5. Mario Norris from Florida in P6. Joyce Engels in P7. What can he do? He's been impressive so far on the stat sheet. And Alan Jolly in P8. David Mittelhoser in P9. He's been a really good driver to watch this season. Mario Navarros in P10. John Michael Nguyen in P11. Fabio Burchard in P12. In fact, Martin Arnolds was the only driver not to take his time. Will start P13. Again, a little bit of a smaller field, unfortunately, but there's plenty of skill to go around.
Yeah, it's not a weak field, is it? Jack Ashton, 1 start. Greg Seitz, 1 win from 1 start. Jory Engels, 1 win from 2 starts. You know, all of these guys have the caliber and the pace to take the victory this evening, or this morning, or this afternoon, I suppose, wherever you are in the world, but only one of them is ultimately going to be able to take it. Somebody's streak is going to get ended here.
Yeah, and then we have to talk about like some of the little you know, kind of dark horses in this race. We have Emil Burstoff, who has only raced here, I think, twice or maybe 3 times this week, and really has not shown off a lot. Christopher Wright is a frequent person in the broadcasted races, but, you know, tends to be a top 5 car, not towards the front. Frank Nguyen, he's high up in the point standings for that action. Again, a little bit of a long lap around here, 1 minute 40 seconds for these Pro Mazda machines.
Yeah, and again, that brings something else into it. You know, we've had the short laps, the ovals, for example, and you get an attempt at the move, the corner where you think you can get the overtake done every 30 seconds, every minute. Here you got to wait a lot longer, so there is an element of patience that's got to come into play, because ultimately, if you're only quicker than them at turn 1, you only get turn 1 just over once every minute and a half. So again, you got to make sure you're there when the opportunity presents itself.
Sort of a long pace lap here. It looks like a full pace lap we're going to be in store for as we're heading now through into the snake section. And this is going to be, I think, a tricky section for later on in this race, because you have to try and remain flat out through here, as I've seen many of the guys posting with their setup videos and with their fast lap videos. But even then, if you get on those curves, if you get on the grass a little bit, you could end up in those tire barriers underneath the bridge. It's so tricky just to maintain like the little balance in the car of control and out of control.
And you combine that with the fact that ultimately it's still a flat-out section all the way up here, so these cars are going to be looking to slipstream each other. That's how we've seen so many of the overtakes done on the road courses, is with the slipstream. So you're trying to get alongside somebody flat out through a section that is by no means straight. It is definitely corners. There's, what, 5 of them during just that section alone. So they're going to have to be a little bit of give and take. You can't be too aggressive.
And here we come into the oak tree section, kind of the famous section that VIR is famous for. That oak tree is on the VIR logo. And again, if you get that corner wrong, you will be sent to North Carolina. The border is only about a few miles away from that corner. And you really, really don't want to screw up there. But it's a really good passing opportunity if you have enough speed. If you go through that south bend into the area, you'll get a good long run out of the straightaway to defend. So we're going to have to watch out for that corner to be a big passing zone.
Yeah, exactly. It reminds me a little bit of the corners at Misano, actually, where you've got the opportunity on the brakes, but you can't compromise yourself onto the straight afterwards. So you got two options. You can either go for the block pass and make sure that neither of you get a good exit, or you can swing it all the way around, nice late turn in to straighten the car up and get the run down towards this section that the cars are currently at.
This is known as the roller coaster section, and see a little bit of history of the course. It's kind of modeled after Laguna Seca. We were talking about that a little bit earlier in the race. It's a little bit of an uphill and a downhill, that corkscrew section, but not as big of a drop, so hopefully drivers won't be going in the corner blind, but it's still a rough uphill braking zone. As now we head into the final corners, 15, 16, and Hog Pen. Everyone files up. The pace car should duck down last second this time by. And the number 2 is going to lead him down at Burskhoff. But what can Christopher Wright do? Green flag is out for Pro Monsters at VIR. And it's going to be a long drag race down into turn 1. Jack Ashton has a huge draft off Burskhoff's car, but he has nowhere to go. There's no space on the inside. And Email in the number 2 is able to maintain the lead. But now Christopher Wright is under fire from Ashton. They're side by side. Can Wright get him clear? Barely. Ashton looks back to the inside. He's going to be looking inside and outside. Now there's going to be a huge drafting opportunity into the snake section. But because it's curving back and forth, it's going to be so easy to lose the car. As everyone single files up, there goes right around. Don't go back in the traffic. New one's around. Hard contact. I believe that's the 8 machine of Norris. A front wing is on the straightaway. Greg Sainz had to check up another 3 and 4 wide going underneath the bridge. And that is just a disaster for Christopher Wright. As now we check back up with Greg Sainz, who is just under fire from everyone. There's Mario Barros, who has picked up a number of spots already, and he's going to have a hefty amount of guys trying to get around him as they head to the Oak Tree section of the 10 car of Mittelhoser. A little bit aggressive on the brakes, but nothing doing there. But now, big drafting opportunity down the straightaway.
Yeah, exactly. We were talking about this just a few moments ago on the little warm-up lap. Nobody quite close enough to make a move here, but just look at how much those gaps compress as all the cars are going a little bit quicker than the one ahead as they then come back down the crest and into here where they'll be looking to make the move in a couple laps' time.
A single file out for now, but what a disaster for Christopher Wright and Mario Norris. Just nowhere to go, and Bernstorff is, I think, the real winner. The Iberian driver comes out ahead with a hefty gap all the way back to Jack Ashton, and Jack Ashton has a hefty gap to Greg Seitz. So it looks like 1 and 2 are going to have a fight to the end, but everyone else is kind of scrapping for the last podium position as here comes Mittelhoser on the inside of Barrios, and that's a good pass from the 10 machine. Can he hold it as we have another car off? It looks like this is the 12 machine of Jean-Michael Nguyen has got it all wrong going into the horseshoe at turn 1.
Yeah, it's so easy to do. You go just a little bit wide, suddenly there's a wheel in the grass, you're spun round. And actually the same's true about trying to turn it in too aggressively. The rear will come round on you before you know it, you've run out of room. Here's the 13 in a little bit of a sandwich though. The 7 trying to get the overtake done, all whilst they both try and get past Mittelholzer up ahead.
Yeah, it's a good start here from Mittelhoser. He's all the way up into the top 5, and Greg Sainz is not that too far away, only a second and a half ahead, but we've seen in the past how hard it is to close a gap down to Greg Seitz, as now Barrios is trying to find a way around. Ingles with a good gap all the way back to Jolly, so it looks like he's got 6th place under control. Berthold in 8th, Arnaldos, who started last in 9th. Jean-Michael, Frank Nguyen, excuse me, who had to go off the course to avoid Wright and Norris colliding into each other, down in 10th place. But it's going to be interesting to see how this top 5 really shapes out, because I don't think Mittelhoser or Barrios are going to leave each other anytime soon.
No, and just as you said, that Nguyen actually made up a place. So we know he's quicker than where he is on the track. I'll be curious to see where Nguyen can get to. Here's Fabio Berchtold, however. He's sitting just behind Jolly in the number 9 car, fighting for 7th position, which is really good showing from both these drivers. They've taken advantage of that first lap chaos, and they're not looking back.
No, and chaos was right. They were like 3 or 4 wide going underneath the bridge section right before turn 7. And Birch a little too far back to get the draft into somebody had a massive lockup going into turn 1. I'm positive that was Ingles because he just dropped a second away from the 13 machine, but now we're heading into the snake section. And again, you get a good draft here, but if you lose that front arrow, the car is just not going to stick in the way that you want it to.
No, this is one of those tracks where you run a little bit more aero despite all those flat-out sections. They're flat-out with corners, and there's plenty of quick corners as well, so you do need a little bit more, and that means that the aero, the dirty air effect, is more present than we've seen in some previous races. But again, it means that the slipstream is even more powerful, so it all balances itself out eventually.
You know, as a person who's a little bit lower on the I rating list right now, I run probably all the downforce I can if I were any of these guys, but right now, Barrios trying to find a way around Mittelhoser. Mittelhoser has not been able to close up Greg Sainz whatsoever, and now the 13 is going to get a hefty dose of draft down the back straight into the roller coaster section. This should be an easy pass for Mario Barrios. Yep, alongside he goes, and right before the braking zone is going to get him clear. So Barrios back into 4th place. But this is going to be, I think, a close battle all the way to the end. These two are not leaving each other behind, and they're not catching Greg Sainz either by fighting with one another.
No, and that was sensible from Mittelholzer there. He just tucked in behind. He knew that it wasn't wise to fight it because then they'd both be losing time towards the cars behind them. And now he's got a chance where he can come back at Barrios. He'll pull to the outside, so Barrios actually got a little bit more defensive. He thinks he can hold this one. The 10 car is going to have to swoop towards the apex if he wants it. Brave on the brakes. Not quite brave enough, and the 13 has the inside and most likely the position. Actually, I tell you what, no, I'm completely wrong.
The inside comes the outside, though.
That's miraculous, that is. That is absolutely top quality driving from Mittelholzer. He's driven around the outside of the 13 as if it wasn't even there.
You saw how loose that car was getting there. Like, the back end was coming out like 2 or 3 times, and that 10 of David Mittelhoser was able to keep it under control. We've seen very, very good driving from him at Suzuka. He made up 4 or 5 places in the final 3 or 4 laps, and it was really excellent driving. But we've seen Mario Barrios be very good on the ovals and the road courses. But again, what does George Ingles have to say? He's just kind of minding his own business in 6th. He hasn't been part of this fight yet.
No, he hasn't, but to be honest, I don't blame him because it has been fierce. Some incredible driving. Remember, the further back you are from the car, the less likely you are to hurt your own tyres in the air wash, but a mistake from Barrios, this will allow Engels right into the slipstream, and now Engels is going to be looking to replicate what he saw just 1 lap ago.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to try and get him going into the roller coaster section. We head uphill, then downhill. The 7, unfortunately, though, when you pull out, you kind of lose all that speed you gain to the draft. So they're going to be side by side in the roller coaster. That's close for both of them. You can probably fit a piece of paper between them, but nothing much more. In the 7 of George Engels into the top 5. Mittelhoser gets a bit of a gap, or a comfort zone at least, in 4th place. All the while, however, Greg Sainz has checked out for 3rd place as we get into the double box now side by side. Barrios now has the draft going down into turn 1. We saw you can hang it on the outside and be effective. Who's going to be braver on the brakes, the 7 or the 13? And it looks like it's going to be the 7. Really good defensive line, but his exit might be compromised. He gets a little loose. I think he's able to hold position for now, but when you're going through the 6 section, that 13 is going to be all over that gearbox.
Yeah, that was textbook defending from the 7 there. Just slow it down. You'll be a little bit slow on the apex, but it doesn't matter because the other car isn't going to get around you if you just park it on the apex for a moment. And then you can accelerate out and you'll have a pretty mediocre exit. But again, so does the guy behind you, so it really doesn't matter. All of that, however, whilst he's being mediocre in mid-corner, just allows Mittelholzer to get away a little bit more once again. So these two, Barrios and Engels, they might need to work together lest they get dropped.
Well, the key here is going to be the oak tree section. Barrios was really, really weak last time by, and that's how Engels got around him. We'll see how the 7 does here. It's a really wide hairpin almost. You can kind of see it in like satellite images. You think it's like a really sharp hairpin, maybe, you know, similar to the end of Long Beach, where it's almost a first gear corner, but it's actually a very wide, sweeping corner. Easy to get wrong if you go in too hot or if you just don't maintain enough speed through the corner.
Yeah, it's a nice one. It's a really satisfying one when you drive it correctly there because it feels right when you get it right. You just go, yeah, that was the maximum through there. I know that I've got that correct, and you can move on to the next one happy. Notably, this time around, Barrios wasn't close enough to pull out the slipstream, which means that these two have now got an opportunity to try and close back up onto Mittelholzer, because they're not fighting each other.
Not fighting each other, but Mittelhozer's not really fighting anyone at the moment. You know, Sainz is almost 5 seconds ahead, Engels is now 2 seconds behind, and Mittelhozer can try and drive away with a nice solid 4th place. He started a little bit down the order as well, I believe in 8th place, and made up 4 in that opening lap chaos and did not get involved miraculously. There was a lot of drivers that could have got involved in that first lap, and the fact that it was only Wright and Norris that are the 2 drivers currently out at the moment, and that Frank Nguyen in the 5 is still running, is a testament, I think, to all these drivers' driving ability to avoid trouble.
Yeah, it was actually Sykes that made it look a little bit awkward. I thought for a moment the 1 car was going to get caught out in that initial incident, but he smashed to slow it all the way down, eventually decided to go for a little bit of an expedition onto the grass, and he did manage to avoid it. He's now running P3, which, to be honest, wouldn't be a bad result, all things considered. Here we go towards the oak tree once again, though. Here's your gentle trail breaking into turn number 12. This time the 7 car got a little bit squirrely, but doesn't seem to have held him up too much, and that gap, it looks to be coming down at least between these 3, so we might be about to get yet another scuffle in a couple laps.
Yeah, the problem here is the tires kind of wear out, that back end wants to get loose, and we really saw it on the oval at Phoenix last week where, you know, the more and more those tires wore out, the more that back end just said, nope, I'm not listening to you, as now really good entry into the roller coaster section for Barrios, and we're heading through Hog Pen now. And it looks like this 13 is going to have the momentum and going to have a good run down this front straightaway, but there's not going to be much he can do. I don't think he's close enough really for a big draft. And the 7's already getting aggressive with defending, going immediately to the inside.
Yeah, potentially a message being sent there as opposed to need for an actual defense, because Engels is certainly not under so much pressure that the move is going to come right here, right now, but you cover the inside, your opponent knows you're going to do it, it just keeps everything fair, less likely for contact at what is, like we've stated, a narrow circuit. So anything you can do to send that message like, hey, I'm going to defend this, don't try anything stupid, you will absolutely take.
You can see in the background, too, Ollie has been caught by Frank Nguyen, and that's going to be the battle for 7th. You're looking at the battle for 5th. There is Frank Nguyen. You can see everyone in the distance, so at least that's encouraging. But how fast can this 5 car be? We're a little under halfway in this race. Can the 5 manage to get into the top 5? It's going to be a tall order, and he's going to have to get around this quick, not really well painted, I will have to say, just blank white default scheme. Number 9 of Alan Jolly.
It was James Hunt's car, was it not? That was just a plain white car back in the day. It can look very nice, to be fair. Just say that the car is pretty and work no more with it. But at the moment, Frank Nguyen is sitting pretty. He's lapping quicker than everybody up to Greg Seitz, and he's near enough on pace with Ashton, actually, as well, lap by lap. So he's certainly got the pace to be up there. Got caught out initially. He's going to try and catch Alan Jolly out here on the run towards the roller coaster, back up the hill. Absolutely lovely. That is just a standard overtake. He's not lost any time there. Now he can set off after Barrios, Engels, and Mittelholzer, and he might just get there.
And I think the best part is not only did he not lose time, he probably actually gained time. That big dose of draft, and Jolly didn't really have that much of a defense to give, I don't think. I don't think he expected Frank Nguyen to come down the inside so early. He was a little bit far back, was this 5 machine, but here we go. He's a couple seconds behind, 3.5, and like you mentioned, he's lapping about a second quicker, so about 4 or 5 laps time, that battle should get heated again as Engels and Barrios are getting closer and closer once again. Mittelhozer mentioned got a 2-second gap. It's now only a 1-second gap as Joris Engels is trying to close as fast as he can. But again, Frank Nguyen avoiding trouble early, keeping him in this race. He still has hope for a top 5.
Yeah, and you mentioned it, those 3, Mittelholzer, Engels, Barrios, they're all getting closer together again. So even if Nguyen's times don't quite stay on track to get him there by the end of the race, the times of the cars ahead of him are likely to drop as they all begin to squabble amongst each other, and that will bring Frank into play, assuming he doesn't make any unforced errors, which we don't often see from Nguyen, to be fair.
No, Nguyen's a very good, consistent driver. Again, top 10, top 5 driver. Normally, we just have yet to see that big breakout race we can get like a win on the broadcast or get on the podium on the broadcast, and we know he's capable of it because the points has reflected it, that he's up there as a top championship contender. as we get further along in the season. This is the halfway point of the season. So what can he do from here as Barrios is closing in on Ingles yet again, but it's about like a half second maybe. Not good enough for a draft. Yeah, there's the view out of the rear wing. Not good enough for a draft, but just keeping your opponent in view, I guess.
Yeah, just having them there or thereabout. Just go back to Nguyen for a moment. It's as though when he's on the broadcast, or maybe just in these races in general, he's not pushing 100%. You know, we never really see him get squirrely or make these little mistakes that would imply you're right on the edge. It seems as if he drives at 90% until he's in a position where he has nothing to lose, and suddenly he's as quick as the leaders. So he needs to find a way to feel comfortable, absolutely on the limit. And before you know it, we'll see him winning races week after week after week. It's just finding that confidence, and then he'll be a championship contender for sure.
And tough thing is also about, like, you know, starting in that midfield. You know, I'm a decently high-rated driver, like the oval side of things, and even this is, I think, where oval and road can really compare. When you are in that mid-range field, in the midfield, and you have drivers that don't race every week come in, and then the consistent drivers always fighting each other in the midfield. It's tough to avoid trouble and tough to really make up spots, and that I think where really Frank Nguyen has been in a lot of these races. He's been in that midfield, kind of like constantly fighting with everyone. He hasn't been able to just set the pace, just get out front, and really just nail those lap times out. As again, Ingles is closing it on Mittelhoser. There he is. That 7 machine is flying down the back straightaway. Easy to try into the roller coaster section. I ain't thought about it. Maybe he was thinking about it. I thought about it at least. And now these three are once again close together. Here comes Barrios as well. Mittelhoser's times have dropped off significantly. Actually, no, he ran his best laps last time by, so Ingles is just going faster. He's now in the 42.1s. That was almost a second faster than Mittelhoser last time by. What's the time going to be this time for these three? As Barrios now has a good bit of draft down into turn 1. And oh boy, these three are going to have a three-way scrap to the end to try and, you know, find out who's going to be in that top 5.
Yeah, they got that lovely little sweet spot where you get all the slipstream and none of the unfortunate aero effect in the corners. Now it's a case of actually making the move, which, as I'm sure all the viewers will be aware, is much harder than just getting on the person in front's gearbox, particularly when you're in Ingles' position. He's in a little bit of a green and white sandwich here. He's going to have to attack and defend, and there he had to defend a little bit more than he would have liked to, potentially, and as a result, he's just dropped towards the car behind him instead of continuing to close up to Mittelholzer.
Yeah, Barrios is going to get a good run down into the oak tree section. Let's hope they don't collide and get it wrong and get sent off to North Carolina as the 13 is getting closer and closer and closer. But again, as you mentioned earlier in the broadcast, it's not straight. There's no way to get a consistent draft. He thought about it going to the inside. He was late on the brakes, unable to capitalize. Can he get a good run in here? Now he has a double dose of draft because Mittelhoser is right in front of this as well, and Ingles is getting a huge draft. He has already pulled alongside Mittelhoser down the back straightaway. They're going to be side by side into the roller coaster section, but can Ingles clear him? It doesn't look like now. Now Barrios says, I want to get around, and Mittelhoser could go all the way back to 6th place in this lap. 6th the nose to the inside, unable to complete the move. Mittelhoser hangs on to the top 5 for now, but man, that was just a bad exit out of the oak tree that really ended up ruining Mittelhoser's day, and he can go all the way now to 6th place if he's not careful.
Well, I think he's struggling a little bit with the tyres, maybe. He ran really deep through the final corner, and now he's under pressure from Barrios. Barrios, the number 13, pulls out of the slipstream, but to the outside. We've seen Mittelholzer go around the outside of Barrios. Can Barrios return the favour? Not quite. David says, no. Don't even think about it. He's nice and light on the brakes, and that'll keep him in the position for at least a couple of corners. But Barrios has got his eye on Engels, who's just gapping both of them pretty quickly.
Engels' fastest lap was a 42.1, which is considerably fast. It's only 0.2 off the leader's best lap of Bernstorff, and it's actually faster than Bernstorff that second to last time by. So that 7 machine showing some really good pace late in this race. But can Barrios get around the 10 of Mittelhoser and go back after George Ingles? It's going to be a fight to the end, I think, as we head up and down 8, 9, and 10 into the South Bend and now into the Oak Tree section where, again, this 10 car has just been struggling. It's a little bit off there as well. That's not going to help him for good measure.
No, he got a little bit squirrely there. That'll unsettle you into the oak tree. He actually missed the apex completely. Yet another awful exit from Mittelholzer. Here comes Barrios, and it's just like a walk in the park. That is for the 13 car. He's on the racing line. He's not even had to use the slipstream. We will have to be aware of David coming back at him, however, because here comes the 10 in the toe. Will he pull to the inside? No, he won't. Just tucks in and says, you know what, if you can drag me back towards Engels, I'm quite happy for you to do so.
The tires just really, I think, have fallen off on that 10 machine. It's, you know, as these other two cars in front of them have gotten faster, the fuel load gets lighter, and maybe they're just better set up for this long run, but I think Mittelholzer is just losing and losing more time. He's in the 43-second mark, which is good, but the high 43 is a 43.9 one time by, and last time by a 44.1. Whereas, actually no, 43.6, only half a second slower than Barrios, but still not where he wants to be, and he should really be aware of Frank Newen, who's closing in a hurry. So a second faster that last lap.
He has got turn 1 sussed out though, hasn't he? He went round the outside of Barrios in the early stages of the race, and just there he managed to be visibly quicker than Barrios once again. So despite the lack of grip, he's figured out how you get around turn 1 quickly. And I've actually got my eye on a little bit of fight between our championship contenders as well. The gap between Seitz and Ashton has been coming down lap by lap by lap. For the first time, it is under a second, so those two are going to get nice and close together before too long. Probably just as close to these three that we're watching, and Newen's closing on all the time as well, so it might be a 4-way fight before too long. He's done it again.
A little bit squirrely there, a little adventurous lines at least, you know. May not pick up some speed, but it's adventurous at least. He's getting down with his bad stuff. As now you can see 5 cars in this picture for the first time since the beginning of the race. I think we can say that. As Engels holds 4th and Barrios holds 5th, and you're right, if you've been watching the ticker on the left side of the screen, you have noticed Ashton and Seitz are within a second of each other, and Ashton's actually closed down the gap to Bernstorff a little bit. It was 3 seconds, now it's only 2.3, but those two are both slowly running out of time, and I think a second and third will make a difference, at least in this small of a split in the points, for the foreseeable future at least.
Yeah, these two are glued together in the championship, so every little will make a difference come the end of it all, and every little is going to make a difference in this fight right here, because Engels initially looked as if he made a little bit of a break, but this time around didn't manage to continue that, because Barrios is free of Mittelholzer and he's reeling in the orange car once again.
Slightly faster that last time too, about half a second faster. As again, if you notice on that ticker again, Sainz getting closer and closer to Jack Ashton. But if these two start fighting, that's going to bring Mittelholzer back into the conversation. It's not like they've dropped him completely. Mittelholzer just struggling for that rear grip in some of these wider corners, in the oak tree especially. That's where he's struggling. As here we go. We haven't seen Jack Ashton or Greg Sainz much at all, or even Emil Bernstorff for that matter, since the beginning of the race. But now it's going to be a fight for P2. Can the Fordzilla driver hold off a charging Greg Sainz instead of a big dose of draft down this back straightaway? And a little bit of an error there, I think, from Bernstorff, because he's now under 2 seconds from Jack Ashton, and all of a sudden the fight for the lead of this race may have just opened up completely.
Greg Seitz has seen an opportunity, hasn't he? Because he'll gain even more lap time in the toe of Ashton. If he can make a nice, efficient overtake here, he's not outside contention for the victory. What's happened to Barrios? Barrios has dropped well down the order.
Oh, and he's, well, I mentioned adventurous lines. Has he got it wrong? He has got it wrong on the edge of the oak tree and pointing again towards North Carolina. Might want to go play with Michael Jordan and the Charlotte Hornets, but now it's going to be a fight between Engels, Mittelholzer, and Frank Newen for the final spots of the top 5. As here comes Greg Sainz, like a hungry shark in the water. He smells blood on Jack Ashton, and even Emil Bernstorff for that matter. Bernstorff is dropping like a rock quickly. That was half a second that Ashton was able to gain on Bernstorff, and Sainz was able to gain 3/10 off of that. So the 2 machine is not safe. A one mistake could change the whole complexity and can change the entire podium right around.
It is getting ever closer, isn't it? And as I mentioned, Seitz is now finding even more lap time. The issue is, this is lap 14 of 15. He's got to pass 2 cars in 2 laps if he wants this one. And when you're in contention for a championship, is it worth the risk of pushing 100%? Probably not. I think I'd be tempted just to sit, or at the very maximum, go for a move on Ashton, because ultimately, Bernstorff's not there in the big picture. Ashton is, however, so might be worth going for that overtake.
Then put an air from Greg Sainz, a little bit of a slide, I think, from the rear. Unable to get a good exit out of the oak tree. He sits a half second behind. He's going to get some draft, but not really enough to close up as we head down into the roller coaster section. Bernstorff still in picture, 1.5 seconds. So it looks like he's stabilized after that air last lap. Not sure where that air came. It's now roller coaster section of 15 and 16 as we head to the final corner of 17. And these three will get the white flag. Emil Bernstorff from Iberia has led every lap, started on pole, and thanks to a little bit of a chaos at the start, really has not been challenged until this point. If he makes an error, if he goes off track, Jack Ashton and Greg Sainz are there, but they're also fighting amongst each other. Sainz gets a good run down into the horseshoe corner as we now head to turn 3. Called NASCAR pen because, well, you turn left. That's the easiest way I'm going to describe that corner. Sainz is looking like he's going to get a big exit to the snake section, though. But can he maintain that gap? We saw last time he wasn't able to keep that gap.
No, he wasn't. But this time, Sainz is right in the slipstream. Only half a second separates these two. And it's going to come down all the way up towards South Bend now. Every single corner, the 1 gets closer to the 3, and the 3 actually gets a little bit closer to the 2 at the front of this race. There could yet be fireworks.
As we head now into the famous oak tree section, the tree that is on the logo of VIR, there was a little bit of an error there from Bernstorff through the snake section. He lost about half a second. It's 1.2 seconds now to Jack Ashton, and Ashton is now under a second. He has the draft of the 2 car in his sights, but speaking of sights, Greg Sainz is right behind Jack Ashton. There could be a late lunge into the roller coaster section. We go down the back straightaway. Greg Sainz can be aggressive on the brakes. He's one of the best at it in the Pro Mazda machine. He looks to the inside, nothing doing there. Can Bernstorff hold on? It's now just 0.7 of a second. That 2 machine cannot afford a mistake as we head through Hog Pen now. He has led every lap. He put that car on pole, and it was a little bit of a last lap scramble. Ashton almost half a second behind, but Emil Bernstorff is able to hold on for a victory. Jack Ashton holds off Greg Sainz for the podium. And now we look back in the field, and all of a sudden Alan Jolly has said, you know what, Frank Newen? I don't want you to finish in front of me. I want you to finish behind me. But as they come to the line, Frank Newen, in a recovery drive from that first lap incident, able to get P6. David Mittelhoser finishes right up front in P5, and well, it's a story of what could have been for Barrios. Down in P8 here, Jean-Michael Newen went off in turn 1, comes across in P9. Fabio Berthold looks like had his issues today in P6, and Martin Arnolis will be the last driver around the number 11 in P11. But that was an exciting end to this race. Ashton, it was half a second. It was that close. I didn't think he could hunt down the 2 machine as well as he could. But man, those 3 gave it everything they got in raw pace.
Yeah, it was a fantastic finale. Everything closing up corner by corner by corner. I think Greg Sainz and Jack Ashton actually had a little bit of a thought of the championship there, because I have no doubt that if Sainz wanted to try it into the oak tree or into the roller coaster, he was close enough to do so, but ultimately decided it wasn't worth the risk. And here's your race results.
Yeah. Emil Bernstorff led every single lap and is able to hold off a charging Fordzilla Jack Ashton and a charging number 1 in Greg Sainz, as those 3 are on the podium. George Singles had a good drive to finish 4th. David Mittelhoser showed his overtaking skills and his defending skills in P5. Frank Newman recovering from that first lap little trip into the grass. Alan Jolly coming home P7th. Mario Barrios unfortunately spun himself out at the exit of the oak tree. Wasn't contended for a top 5, coming home in 8th. Jean-Michael Newen in P9 after going off in the horseshoe, and Fabio Berthold coming home and rounding out your top 10. Martin Arnoldis in the 11 finishes P11, and unfortunately here are the 2 victims of that crash. Mario Norris able to finish 6 laps down with significant damage after colliding with a spinning Christopher Wright at the exit of the snake section. Well, it was getting a little bit spread out there for that middle portion of the race, and then everyone came back together in the end at least and gave us an exciting finish at the end.
Yeah, it was really good, and that battle going on between Barrios and Mittelholzer the whole time was absolutely incredible. They gave each other so much respect and just enough racing room. But here we're going to get to see what happened right at the start.
Yeah, a little bit of a case of the commentator's curse on my part, I guess, because I was mentioning Christopher Wright is a solid driver. Is ranked 4th in this race, and you know, again, he's also a midfield driver that just needs that breakout race. And right here, it's going to be into the 6th section. Just the rear end comes out. And this is just fantastic driving. Somehow, the 4 car just gets hit by only one other machine. And everyone just going around them. I don't even know how the 5 was able to keep it out of the wall. And here's John Michael Nguyen going a little bit adventurous. Another horseshoe. Finding alternative lines.
You gotta try all the track. You never know where the perfect line is gonna be. The 12, yeah, it's just a simple lockup. So easy to do, and before you know it, you're on the grass and you've run out of room to try and get the car stopped. This is easily move of the day. For me, it's the best move I've seen in a long time. The 10 pulls out of the slipstream. He's on the outside. I think it's done and dusted by here. The 13's easily going to hold the place, but David Mittelholzer had other ideas. He gets pushed all the way to the edge of the circuit, and he hangs on in there, keeps his foot flat to the floor, and then he's ahead by the time they reach NASCAR Bend.
And that Castrol livery number 10 really showing his overtaking skills and his defending skills. Unfortunately, though, late in the race, it really fell off for him, though. I think the tires went away, the grip went away, and that was an area where Ingles was able to capitalize and get up to P4. And for a time, to look right here at Barrios, that was looking into the roller coaster section for a second. It could have been dicey if he tried it. Barrios was also in P5, so it was a little bit of a scary P5 finish for Mittelholzer. He could have been in P6 or even P7 if things went the wrong way.
Yeah, and here it was. It just continued all the way through, didn't it? This time it was Mittelholzer in the slipstream, closing down Barrios. He got a nice little run up over the crest of the number 10, but ultimately not quite there as they reached the braking zone into the roller coaster. He never gives up, does he? He was happy to have another run at it and another one throughout the rest of the race.
Yeah, this was unfortunately the error of the 13, just that tire into the dirt, just a little bit. It wasn't even like a lot, like maybe 1/16 of an inch is all I think it took for that 13 to go around, and he was able to recover and at least finish in 8th place. But again, at the end, this is how close it was, and Bernstorff, remember, had a 3-second lead after that first lap chaos, and Ashton had a 3-second gap all the way to Greg Sainz, and somehow they finished under a second, all 3 of them.
Yeah, I mean, that's why Ashton and Sainz are all the way up there in the championship, isn't it? Because it didn't go well for either of them relative to Bernstorff, and yet they were just tenths of a second away from winning the race. Ultimately, however, you've got to give credit to Emil Bernstorff. He didn't crack under the pressure. He held it together when he had the 2 championship protagonists closing him down lap by lap, and he said, no, I'm staying firm. You can catch me, but you cannot pass me. This is my race to lose, and he didn't lose it. He took home the victory.
So as I mentioned, halfway point in the season 1 of 2021 here at Virginia. We've done 2 ovals, 3 road courses, and 1 street circuit so far. And next week we head to Sebring, which that should be really fun and entertaining. It's a much wider course, so there's going to be plenty of overtaking to be seen. And then we go international. We head to Silverstone at the beginning of February, and then to Imola right after that until our final oval, USA Speedway. Should be a fun little unique track, the high banked little circuit. Everyone owns it, everyone knows it. And then the final 2 races, 2 classic tracks, Spa and Road Atlanta. The schedule, I think, just keeps getting better and better.
Yeah, just develops race after race after race, doesn't it? We've had a couple ovals, then we got to the fantastic Virginia. Next week we get Sebring. We just go through all of the classics in this series.
So that ends our broadcast here for the Indy Pro 2000 Championship. I'm Jonathan Burke. Alongside me was Tom Davis, Hugo Luis doing the camera work, and track cams provided by Track Cams 22 and Istvan Balo. If you're interested in more racing, don't go away anytime soon. We actually have Friday Night Primetime, the IR01 at Long Beach coming up, and don't forget, the Daytona 24-hour iRacing race is also coming up here on RaceSpotTV. But that concludes this week's coverage of Indy Pro 2000. Have a safe night, everyone, and enjoy your racing.